something interesting about this command from God, about the emphasis that he gives you. He creates everything, this incredible, beautiful, magnificent place. And let's face it, this is an incredible, beautiful, magnificent place. I remember one of my kids, actually a number of them have probably said this at various times, but in the last month or so, one of them has started sort of asking some of these questions, and he has specifically started wondering, what's heaven going to be like? And I don't know about you, maybe it's just my family, but my kids go through this phase where they're worried about what heaven will be. And their worry seems to center on the fact that they're afraid it'll be so foreign to what they're used to that they can't possibly enjoy it. And so he says to me, what is it really like? And one of them, actually two of them asked this question once, and one of them said, is it just walking on golden streets and singing, just singing worship all the time and just standing around and singing Kumbaya? And he said, because that doesn't, I'm sorry, maybe I'm immature, but that doesn't really sound that great to me. And I said, me either. Me either. I think there's more to it than that. I think we're going to love worship. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be about intimacy. But just if it's just what we do on Sunday morning, I love what we do on Sunday morning, but I don't want to do it for eternity. No, I'm serious. Be honest here. You don't either. So I thought, he's saying, but what are we going to do? What is it like? And I kind of like the world. And I don't think he meant this in any sort of, oh no, I should need to throw a verse at my child and tell him if you love the world, you hate God. I think he just meant there's things here that are kind of cool. And I think what we need to realize is, God made something magnificent and incredible, and beautiful. And then he told us to take care of it. He told us to be responsible for it. There's an interesting thing. I've been, one of my goals, and I don't say this a lot, but I'll say it this morning because it relates to what I want to say. One of my goals that occasionally I'll tell people, not explain this, but occasionally I tell people, one of the things I want Lifesong to do is I just wanted to leave those unbelievers in a state of constant confusion. And here's what I mean by that. There's certain boxes, there's certain ideas that the evangelical church has allowed itself to be put in. And unfortunately, some of those boxes are very, very opposed to what God would have us represent. People think that the evangelical church is not interested in helping the poor. God forbid that should be our reputation, and I mean that literally. They also think that we don't understand the importance of stewardship of the earth. Now look, it is so politicized. I understand that. And there's so much stuff out there, and the science is so confusing. Not just about global warming, but about anything. I wake up one morning, coffee's good for me. I wake up the next morning, coffee's bad for me. I wake up the next morning, coffee's good for me again. If I can just figure out which days it's good for me, then we'd be okay. The science is so confusing, and the information is so massive. I'm not talking about sort of the weird paranoid certainty that leads to an obsession and a panic about the state of the earth. That's not what we need to do. We trust God. We believe God has a plan. But he did tell us to take care of it, didn't he? This week is Earth Day week. And I've never in my life heard an evangelical church comment on the fact that it's Earth Day. I've heard churches who have taken holidays for, talked about President's Day, which seems great to me. I've heard them talk about, Easter and all these other big holidays that make sense. And I'm not about to, institute I'm not trying to institute a tradition or do anything major here. But I thought it's worth acknowledging that it's Earth Day this week. Why? Because we as Christians, more than anybody, understand our stewardship for the earth, don't we? Amen. We ought to be at least aware of it. I think everybody agrees this is a tragedy. This is a travesty. This is not what God had in mind for his beaches, is it? No. It's just not what we as Christians ought to be looking to do. And furthermore, we as Christians understand the power of each of us doing what God calls us to do as he calls us to. We understand that if we're walking down the street and we see somebody in need, we have a responsibility to respond to that need, don't we? Likewise, can I just suggest this week that if you're walking down the street and you see a piece of litter on the ground, it's possible that God might have a ministry for you which will take you 30 seconds. Seriously, does that make sense? I'm not going to dwell on this aspect, but does that make sense? That's one aspect of our stewardship. Let's acknowledge it, let's embrace it. Let's not people tell us that we shouldn't be worried about the state of the earth. We should do what God calls us to do. We should trust God, we should not panic, but we should do what God calls us to do, even in relationship. Oops. you know, not by touch, but it brings me to the wrong email message. I don't want to teach, you know, on somebody's private emails. You might want me to, but so, my apologies. I told some of you last week, you know, if anything at Lifesong were real, this is a real moment of human error. So you know what, in light of that, and then we will move on from this, but in light of that, I'd like to do something here this morning. And it's, again, I think this is not only relevant for Earth Day, but I think for us, for those of us who understand this, for those of us who are Christians and believers, we know that God has called us. I tell my children this all the time. The world was magnificent and glorious when God created it. There's a lot of things in it now which are more like that. And I don't just mean the physical world, I mean the world in general. It's kind of icky, it's kind of polluted, it's been contaminated by sin, things are not where they ought to do. But one of the things that God has called us to do is use everything that we've been given, all our talents and all our gifts, just to bring a little bit of beauty into the world. Just a little bit of beauty into the world. And I have a physical manifestation of that for you this morning, something that is relevant in light of Earth Day, but it's relevant in light of the fact that we are to bring beauty to the world. And as we talk about stewardship in a broader sense the rest of this morning, I want this to be kind of a reminder to you. Now, we have enough, basically, I think, one for family, I hope. If we don't get you another one. But what we have here is, this is just a gift from Lifesong to your family. It's just some flower seeds. Consider planting them. All right? Consider actually planting them. I know, my family, they'll go home and they'll sit on the counter, so I'm trying. Actually plant them. I think it'll be great. Those of you who are homeschooling your kids, make it a homeschool project. Those of you who are not, just make it a fun project. All right? Can I get a couple people just kind of, here, we'll just pass it around. Make sure it gets to everybody. Jeff, you're a stewardship of that. Well, what is stewardship on a larger sense? That's really what the message I want to give today. Here's a definition for you. A steward is one who has been entrusted to take care of another's property and who expects to give a final accounting to the owner. A steward is someone who's been entrusted to take care of another's property and who expects to give a final accounting to its owner. So we look at the earth and we say the earth isn't really ours, it doesn't belong to us, right? But in light of the earth, we know that we've been entrusted with it. God said our image was related to our purpose. You were to rule over the earth. We understand, I think, some of the differences again. We understand that life is more important than rock. And we understand that human life is more sacred than animal life. But I think we can say that, understanding the Scripture is clear on those things.